Welcome everyone. I'd like to share my thoughts on the recently released SIMAGIC Alpha Mini Direct Drive Wheelbase. I'll be making some comparisons to the M10 unit in this video since that's the hardware I've been using for the past year and have the most experience with. Hopefully, with the information and feedback I provide, you're able to make a more educated decision on your future purchase. I always recommend researching as much as possible to see what suits your needs and situation best. The first thing to take note of for SIMAGIC products is that due to third-party distributors supplying the hardware, pricing will vary depending on where you live. Because of this, I won't be mentioning pricing details or whether this unit is a good value for you. That's something you're going to have to look into and determine yourself. The second thing to note is currently the SIMAGIC ecosystem isn't compatible with consoles, so their hardware and my review is geared towards PC users. Perhaps with enough time and support that will change in the future. I've had this unit for almost 3 weeks now, which has given me time to familiarize myself with the hardware and software. I also wanted to let my initial excitement wear off before giving any kind of feedback. And keep in mind, I haven't been spoiled by more expensive hardware, so consider my feedback more from an average consumer's perspective. So with that said, let's start with my initial impressions. Now, first off, I was really surprised at how small this unit is compared to the M10. It has a very small form factor that really appeals to me. I'll throw some screenshots up on screen for you for a comparison. Next, I wasn't expecting the Mini to be as heavy as it is based on the size of the unit. It's a hefty little piece of gear that feels solid in my hands. One of the first things I did once I unboxed it was grab the shaft here and spun it to see how it felt. And I was actually quite surprised at how smooth it is even before applying power to the electromagnets. Now, the overall build quality is actually quite impressive. It's clear that SIMAGIC aims for professional level equipment here. I was a little disappointed that it didn't come with brackets, but it wasn't a big deal for me. I'm sure it's mainly to help keep costs down for users who may already have mounting solutions. But knowing SIMAGIC, that might change in the future as they're always improving their products. Now for setup, it was a simple swap from the M10. I unmounted the M10 unit, uninstalled the Race Manager software, mounted the Mini here, and downloaded and extracted Alpha Manager and was pretty much good to go. Originally, when I had mounted the unit from underneath, they lined up with the pre-drilled holes on my GT Omega rig here. But in order to use the Alpha brackets, which are sold separately, I did have to drill 4 new holes, which wasn't a big deal for me. Now, all SIMAGIC wheelbases share the same VID and PID numbers. So any setups, fixes, bindings that you have for your games will work without having to reapply everything. This also means that the fixes and solutions that are available on the SIMAGIC compatibility list will work across all SIMAGIC units. Now, even if this is your first SIMAGIC unit, it's pretty simple to get up and running. The PC detects the wheelbase as soon as it's connected. You then download and launch Alpha Manager, which is the driver software for SIMAGIC Alpha family, and you're pretty much good to go. It's that simple. Now for hardware, I'm not going to go into too much detail. I'm not going to be tearing my unit apart here. Barry Rowland from SRG will be releasing his review on this unit once it's complete, so keep an eye out for that. I can, however, give you some of the main points, which I'll be referencing from my sheet here. So all units come with a 1-year warranty, which is covered through your local distributor. These motors tend to last for quite a long time, so I have no concerns about the unit breaking down anytime soon. This will most likely outlast me and is one of the main selling points for me. So the Mini uses a servo motor just like its bigger brother, the Alpha. On top of being very smooth, servo motors are great at delivering and holding high torque at high rotational speeds. The Mini has quite a small footprint. I'll put my hand next to it as a reference. So it measures in at 110 millimeters across, 110 millimeters from top to bottom, and 267 millimeters from back to front. I'll put a spec sheet up on screen with the measurements so you can take a look for yourself. The unit weighs in at 6.35 kilograms, or roughly 14 pounds. So you will need something solid to mount it to. The Mini uses an 18-bit encoder with a resolution of 262,144, whereas the M10 uses a 14-bit encoder with a resolution of 16,384. So this allows for more precise steering inputs while driving. Now, as previously stated, the Mini has the same bolt pattern as Fanatec on the bottom here. The side holes are spaced 50 millimeters apart, if you'd like to mount it that way. The unit can also be mounted from the front using these 4 holes here. And they all take M6 bolts for mounting. And as you can see, it's compatible with the Alpha brackets, which are sold separately, and is actually quite solid. I've had no concerns of flexing whatsoever. All the movement that you see is from my wheel deck. SIMAGIC units are completely wireless. Built-in power supply, which is sent through the front plate here. Provides power to the SIMAGIC rims via the pins located within the quick release. It also utilizes a wireless communication system, which is located behind the carbon fiber plate here. So it's going to be nice and close to your wheelbase and provide a strong signal. Now, in order to make use of these features, you must use a SIMAGIC rim with the unit, like one of these here. You can use other rims with the SIMAGIC wheelbases, so you're not forced to buy the one SIMAGIC offers, but any rim that has a button box will need to be connected to your PC via USB in order for the button box to receive power and have its button inputs detected. So the Mini utilizes a D1 spec quick release system with a 10 bearing design, 6 on the top, 4 on the bottom here. It's one of my favorite features, honestly, and it's super quick and efficient to swap or remove rims. It's also very solid. I haven't experienced any play or issues with this design and honestly couldn't ask for better. So here over on the right side, we have a CAN bus port, and that's used to connect any future SIMAGIC peripherals like pedals or shifters. It's also used to change the wireless channel on all of your rims. Above that, we have a Safe B port, and that's used to connect the Alpha kill switch, which is sold separately. On the left side of the unit here, we have the power port, which connects to the power supply, and it uses a quick release locking mechanism, which is very nice, keeps it nice and secure. Above that, we have a USB Type B port to connect to your PC. I personally like this design as it keeps the rear of the unit clear, allowing closer installation to your monitor. And yes, I know I have a gap between my unit and monitor, but I'm using a 50-inch 1080p TV and would like to keep my vision intact. The Mini uses passive cooling, so what that means is there are no fans, which results in silent operation and means no dust can enter the internals. It also means the unit can get quite warm with long stints, but hasn't resulted in any kind of force feedback feed or degradation during my testing. Now, I've actually set my unit to unrealistic levels when testing to push the unit and see if I can induce any kind of failure or degradation. I can happily say that this unit just keeps on delivering. So the power supply that comes with the unit is fairly small when compared to other direct drive units. It's roughly the same size as the M10s, and I have it tucked down on the floor there. It does work worldwide. Since my unboxing, I've received updated stickers from my distributor, which you can see on screen with the updated specs. Now, initially, my unit didn't come with a power adapter, but one was sent to me along with the updated sticker for the power supply. I was also informed that the international orders will receive a power adapter with their units. Now, you'll notice that the adapter isn't grounded, which hasn't caused me any issues. Mind you, my unit is connected to its own surge protected power bar, but you may want to replace this with a grounded one to help protect against any electrical surges that may occur. The Mini uses the same Alpha Manager software and firmware as the Alpha Wheelbase, which should always be downloaded from SIMAGIC.com. The latest Alpha Manager version 2.2, combined with firmware 6050 or higher, utilizes a new algorithm for friction calculation and a third generation sine wave reconstruction algorithm. In layman's terms, it delivers a more natural, realistic feeling that's more relatable to a real car. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail on each setting, as I'll be making a more in-depth how-to video for Alpha Manager, but I'll give you a basic rundown and show you some of the new features implemented. We'll start with the setting page here. This is where you're going to make all of your adjustments to the force feedback signal. Now, the force feedback signal coming in from the game gets split into these 4 different game effects here. And whether or not these actually have an effect is determined by the type of force feedback that the game is using. Mechanical settings are constant forces produced by your driver software, which includes total force or your overall strength, like a volume dial. On the right, we have a meter to measure your axis, and as you can see with the higher resolution encoder, it is quite sensitive. I barely have to move the wheel here. Below that, we can set our total wheel rotation. And we can also set a manual bump stop. So for games like ACC, where your wheel will continue to spin past the in-game wheel, you can now set your own soft lock. So for example, right now it's a 480, meaning it's going to stop at 240 in either direction. So that's a handy little feature. And if you don't want to use that, just click the sync button here, and that'll give you the full rotation that you have set for your wheel angle, as you can see. Now, if you ever find that your wheel is off-centered or misaligned, that's what the center button here is for. Just center your wheel, click the button, and that'll fix that issue. Wheel speed does just that. It controls how fast the wheel can react to the force feedback. The lower you set this, the more of a damping filter it's going to introduce into the wheel, and it's going to restrict movement and hinder force feedback. So right now it's got quite some dampening on it. It's set at 10 versus at 100 here. It's pretty freewheeling. Next to that, we have suspension. Now this kind of acts like a contrast slider, like a TV. Raising this up is going to sharpen the signal. So driving over curbs, road texture, your tires, things like that, it's going to be accentuated. But going too high can create noise and resonance in your wheelbase. And it can also make the wheelbase feel like there's something loose inside if you go too high. Read base does just that. It's going to pull the settings that's saved internally and put them up on here. Write storage saves these current settings to the internal memory of your wheelbase, as well as saves it to your current profile that you're using. Save as allows you to save custom profiles for each game. You can have as many as you like. And once you have some profiles, you can use the drop down box here to select between them. I'll move over to the calibration page here. Now this is where you're going to be able to view and adjust any future SIMAGIC devices like pedals in the shifter that are connected through the CAN bus port. These two here are for measuring and adjusting your clutch paddles on your GT4 wheel. This is also where we can test to see if our button inputs are being recognized or not. And you may have noticed that these 4 buttons here have a blue circle around them. And they actually correspond to the 4 buttons on your GT1 button box here. So when you set your button box to calibration mode and you hit one of these buttons, it sets it to that rotation. Now, one of the new features is you can actually manually adjust these and set your own rotations. So for example, on this one, you double click it, you enter your value, you hit enter, and then you go to the settings page and you click write storage to save them. Now when you flick the calibration there and you push the button, it's going to set it to your custom wheel angle. So that's pretty cool. You can have 4 different custom angles. So if you have different cars you drive, you can quickly swap the angles without leaving the game and entering Alpha Manager. Now, the next page is your state page. This tells you what firmware that you're running. Now for the Mini Wheelbase, I am running 6054, but because it's the Mini, it shows the 7000 series, and Alpha Wheelbases will show a 6000 series. That's just to help differentiate the units. It also shows you what version of Alpha Manager that you're running, which is currently 2.2. Shows you the voltage of the wheelbase, which is a roaming voltage, so you're going to see it go up and down as you turn the wheel. That's normal. This is also where you're going to change your channels for all of your rims. You do have to connect the rim to the CAN bus port with a USB cable prior to doing this. I do have a how-to video posted already on how to do this if you like. The limit hardness, well, this allows you to adjust the strength of the software lock. Right now it's set low, so it's got some give to it and actually feels pretty good and natural to me. But you can actually crank this rate up and it's gonna be quite a harsh bump stop if you like that. The other thing we have is system state. So when everything's all good, you're going to have the one green light. But if there are any kind of errors, they will pop up here with a red light, letting you know which one it is. We also have a factory reset button here. So if you find something's glitching, maybe on the calibration page, you find some odd numbers, what have you, you can click on factory reset and power cycle your base, and it should, for the most part, fix it. Now we also have a bootload page built into Alpha Manager. This allows you to update your firmware. Now you just choose a file, select your file, click open, and then click on download. Wait for it to hit 100%. A notification will pop up. You click OK, power cycle your base, and you're good to go. I've upgraded and downgraded quite a few times successfully the first time. I haven't had any issues. So it is much more stable now. Now the one thing I do like about Alpha Manager is how it delivers pure raw force feedback. This is something that's important to me, as I want the most accurate form of force feedback possible. There's no auto-tune or automatic software manipulation involved, which can make setting up certain games difficult since it shows you the game for what it is. This also means consistency varies across game titles depending on the type of force feedback being used. No game is created equally, and as such, they shouldn't all feel the same. Game compatibility, for the most part, as long as the game supports the direct input API for steering wheels, SIMAGIC products work out of the box. For older games or games that no longer have developer support, they can require a bit more work to get running. This isn't an issue towards SIMAGIC, as it's a problem across various DD wheelbases, but can be a headache if you don't know what to do. Luckily, there's a compatibility list with fixes and updates to get various games working, which I'll link down below. I'm not going to go over all the games that I play, but I'll show you a few of the more popular ones as examples. I like to test my hardware with some drifting in Assetto Corsa. I find that the fast transitions can help reveal any notchiness or resonance that may be present in the hardware. The first thing that I noticed was the force feedback from this unit feels and acts very natural, as you can see from my drifting clip. Transitions are smooth and act more like a real car does. That's something I struggled with on the M10 unit. Second, the Mini is stupidly smooth. I actually had to adapt to how smooth the performance is. It didn't take long, but it was still an adjustment. Here in ACC, with the M10, I didn't really use my GT4 wheel as much, as it accentuated the notchy feeling due to the smaller diameter wheel. I'm happy to say that's not the case here, and prefer to use my GT4 rim when playing ACC. Now, ACC is a good game to test for noise and resonance in the wheelbase. Using the 333 Hz signal in combination with some cars can produce a grainy feeling while driving. I'm happy to say that I get a pretty clean signal with minimal use of the smoothing parameter in Alpha Manager, which means that I'm no longer swapping between the 222 Hz and 333 Hz signals. Implementation of wheel inertia in combination with the new friction algorithm produces a nice decelerating wobble when you let go of the wheel, which feels very natural. iRacing and its low quality 60 Hz force feedback signal is something I never really meshed with on the M10. Without the use of IRFFB, I simply wouldn't play this game. But with the Mini being a servo motor and Alpha Manager's new algorithm, I was actually able to find settings that are fairly pleasing to me without the use of IRFFB. I did have to turn up the smoothing filter, but was able to find a decent balance between smoothness and fidelity. I also noticed that I'm getting more detail with the Mini. Driving off-road and going over rumble strips are more pronounced. This is partially due to the new suspension setting, which allows you to sharpen the force feedback signal. Overall, across all of my games that I tested, I found there's more detail and fidelity with the Mini than the M10. SIMAGIC is a fairly new company, but has come a long way in the past year or two and continue to improve and refine their product. It's actually quite impressive what they've managed to do in such a short time. I honestly wouldn't be surprised to see them as one of the top companies given enough time. And when I ordered the Mini, I wasn't expecting such a big upgrade in performance. I'm someone who isn't easily impressed, but in terms of performance, every time I jump into a game, I keep saying wow. I happen to be extremely sensitive to force feedback and like to drive with finesse and precision. I drive with my fingertips, so I don't like to use gloves while racing. Basically, I need to feel what the suspension and tires are doing at all times, as well as weight transfer in order to consistently drive on the limit. And I can happily say that the Mini unit delivers in this aspect very well. Now, being a servo motor, I found it's not as punchy as the M10, but in a good way. It has a softer, more natural feel versus the more robotic nature of the M10. The M10, being a stepper motor, does one thing well, and that's delivering short bursts of high torque at low rotational speed, which is why the M10 feels like it's punching above its weight. As a result, I found myself increasing the total force on the Mini by about 10 to 20 across all my settings. The strength is also somewhat dependent on the suspension parameter within Alpha Manager. With that said, at 10 Newton meters, I think this unit is more than strong enough for the majority of users out there. I never found myself saying that I wanted more, even with total force maxed out. Honestly, I think with any more power, it'll just speed up fatigue, especially if you like to drive longer stints. However, if you're someone who likes to drive older cars with no power steering and want a closer experience of the forces those older cars can produce, you may want to look at something stronger like the Alpha. Compared to the M10, the Mini simply outperforms it in every way. It's able to take advantage of the new algorithm SIMAGIC has implemented and utilizes better hardware. Now, don't take my review as a knock to the M10. I still have my unit and I'm in the process of building a second rig with it. The M10 outperforms any belt or gear driven wheelbase on the market and is still one of the best stepper motors available. But the bottom line is, I have nothing really bad to say about the SIMAGIC Mini Wheelbase. The hardware is solid with a great design, and the software is constantly being improved and innovated to deliver an optimal experience. I'm very satisfied with the performance this little unit delivers and have no urge to upgrade. I think the Mini is worthy of your hard-earned cash and should be considered as a viable option when doing your research. Thank you for watching, and I hope this video helps answer some of the questions you may have had about the Mini. I'll catch you guys in my next video. Peace.